The sky above GalacticPrime burned with fire and smoke. The remnants of the Galactic Alliance fleet were scattered in orbit, their ships torn apart by the relentless assault of the Vakthar Dominion. The Dominion ships were like moving fortresses, enormous and terrifying, bristling with weapons that could slice planets in half. From the ground, soldiers watched helplessly as orbiting cities of steel crumbled and fell. Admiral Rin Korath stood on the bridge of the command center, his eyes scanning the chaos outside. He had seen many battles in his life, fought countless wars, and survived more than most would in a lifetime. Yet this complete, overwhelming destruction was unlike anything he had ever faced. The Vakthar had studied every weakness, anticipated every strategy, and crushed every attempt to resist. The command center was alive with panic. Screens flickered with incoming reports. Ships destroyed, outposts lost, civilian evacuations failing. A young officer rushed past Korath, clutching a datapad, shouting numbers that meant little without context. The admiral waved him away, not out of anger, but because there was no time. Every moment spent worrying about details was a moment the Dominion would use to strike harder. "Admiral," a voice called from the side. It was Sarah Talon, a junior communications officer. Her usual calm demeanor was gone, replaced by something sharp. Fear, hope, or both, Korath could not tell. "The situation is beyond anything we can manage. Reinforcements aren't responding. It looks like—" She paused, unable to finish the thought. Korath shook his head slowly. He had already known. The Galactic Alliance had fought together for centuries, but their strength had always been tied to cooperation. Now, with the Dominion moving faster than anyone could respond, and the other fleets cut off, the Alliance was crumbling. "I know, Sergeant. I know," he said quietly. "Prepare the evacuation orders. Every civilian ship that can escape, let it. And rally the troops. We make our last stand here." Even as he spoke, he felt the weight of the moment. For decades, humans had been a part of galactic life. Humans were clever, strong, and brave, but decades ago, they had retreated to their own system and gone silent. Some called it abandonment, others called it wisdom. Regardless, the galaxy had learned to survive without them, until now. Without human ingenuity, the Alliance was falling apart. In the streets of GalacticPrime, families hid under shattered buildings. Children clutched their parents, terrified by the streaks of fire that fell from orbit, lighting the world like the end of time. Soldiers moved quickly, carrying civilians to evacuation points, dodging plasma fire from above. The Dominion's dropships descended like swarms of metal hornets, unloading troops who moved with inhuman precision. Korath had studied their tactics. They were not merely soldiers. They were calculated instruments of war, and yet amidst the terror, Korath felt a strange kind of clarity. When the odds are this desperate, clarity comes naturally. The Alliance may have been beaten, but that did not mean it had to end quietly. "Hold your positions," he ordered. "Even if it's only for a few minutes, we will make every shot count. If we fall as warriors, not as victims." Sarah glanced at him. "And the humans?" she asked, almost as if she didn't want to hope. "No one has heard from them in decades. They might never come." Korath's jaw tightened. "Then we fight. We fight because we must. And if they do come—" He did not finish. The thought of humans returning after all this time felt like a spark in a dying star. Impossible yet irresistible. The Dominion's warships darkened the sky as they moved in formation. The orbital bombardment grew heavier, shaking the planet's surface. Cities that had stood for centuries collapsed in seconds. Entire sections of the planet were erased, leaving nothing but rubble and fire. The screams of those caught in the destruction echoed through the command center via communication feeds. It was chaos, but Korath refused to let despair take him. He turned to his officers. "All sectors report. I want to know who can still fight and who can still escape." Reports came in fragmented, almost meaningless. A small fleet survived in the north. Another group was trapped under orbital fire, and civilian evacuation vessels were barely holding together. The numbers were grim, but there were survivors. There was always a chance, no matter how small. On the bridge, Korath noticed the youngest officer, Ensign Mira Talon, staring at a monitor with wide eyes. "Sir?" she whispered. Do we even stand a chance?" Korath placed a firm hand on her shoulder. "If we do not try, we will have no chance at all. We will fight. That is all we can do." Outside, the sky continued to fall apart. Dominion fighters swooped down, engaging in dogfights with the last remaining Alliance ships. The air was filled with fire, smoke, and the sound of destruction. And yet, the soldiers and pilots on Tirith Prime did not give up. Every turret fired until it melted. Every soldier held their position until they could no longer stand. Even in the shadow of certain defeat, they fought. Somewhere in the chaos, Korath allowed himself to think of humanity. He remembered old stories, tales passed down from the time humans had first joined the Galactic Alliance. Stories of humans doing the impossible, of turning defeat into victory through sheer determination and innovation. And even though the humans had disappeared, their legend remained. Korath clenched his fist. If the humans are out there, he said to himself, then maybe we are not completely alone. As night fell on Tirith Prime, the planet's horizon glowed red from the fires above. Smoke rose like the fingers of the dead, and the cries of those still alive filled the air. Korath and his officers worked tirelessly, coordinating the retreat and defense of the remaining cities. Every second counted, every decision mattered. Lives depended on them. Then, just before the first hour of complete darkness, a faint signal appeared on the communication net. It was strange, almost too faint to detect. Sarah Talon's eyes widened as she ran a diagnostic. "Sir, I'm picking up something." "Unusual," she said. It's human." Korath froze. "Human?" "Yes, I don't know how, but it is." I thought humans had left. They're gone." Korath's heart raced. Could it be real? Could the humans long thought vanished have returned at the very moment the Alliance needed them most? He did not answer immediately. Instead, he stared out at the burning horizon, at the Dominion fleet pressing its advantage, and at the soldiers who were still holding their ground against impossible odds. For the first time in many hours, a sliver of hope appeared, small but undeniable. Korath's mind worked quickly. "Prepare a secure channel, Sergeant. If this is real, we need to know. The Alliance may not be beaten yet." As Sarah scrambled to follow his orders, Korath turned back to the viewport. The sky continued to fall apart, but now in the distance a single question burned brighter than the fire and smoke of Tirith Prime. Could the humans really be returning? And for the first time that day, Korath allowed himself to believe. Maybe, just maybe, all was not lost. Sarah Talon's fingers flew over the holographic console, decoding the strange transmission that had just appeared on the communication net. The message was old, encrypted in a pattern that no one had seen for decades. The humans had their own style of communication, complex, efficient, and unmistakably theirs. Sarah's heart raced as the code slowly unraveled. "Sir," she said, her voice trembling with excitement, I think it's a human transmission. It's from the Sol system. They're coming." Admiral Rin Korath turned to her, his eyes narrowing as he tried to make sense of what she was saying. "Humans?" he asked, though he already understood the implication. Humans had been gone from galactic affairs for 50 years. Their disappearance had been a mystery, even a tragedy for the Alliance. To think they were returning now at the very moment the Dominion was about to crush all resistance was almost impossible. "Yes, sir. The transmission, it says they are mobilizing a fleet. I don't know how many ships, but the message is clear. They are coming to help." Korath's mind raced. Could it really be true? Could the humans, long thought lost, still have ships capable of crossing light years in time to save them? He allowed himself a small spark of hope. "Prepare a broadcast to all surviving fleets. Tell them to hold positions. Reinforcements may arrive." He did not dare believe it fully, not yet. Too much had been lost. But in the command center, the soldiers and officers were already noticing a subtle shift. The despair that had filled the room began to ease, replaced by cautious hope. Meanwhile, deep in the uncharted reaches of the galaxy, beyond all known star charts, massive engines stirred to life. Hidden behind the dark side of Luna, the remnants of humanity's long-lost fleet emerged from decades of silence. The flagship, the UHS Invictus, rose from the shadows like a sleeping giant, its hull gleaming with the weight of history. Captain Elena Drake stood on the bridge of the Invictus, her gaze steady and commanding. The ship had been dormant for decades, preserved for a time like this. Her crew, selected for skill, courage, and loyalty, had waited in stasis, ready for the moment humanity would return to the galaxy. Drake watched the stars streak past the viewport as the ship's engines ignited. "Set course for Tirith Prime," she ordered. "The Alliance is in trouble, and it's our turn to remind the galaxy what humans can do." Her first officer, Commander Jarek Voss, nodded. "The fleet is ready, Captain. Every ship operational. Sensors indicate Dominion activity near DEATHWORLD is extensive. This will not be easy." Drake smiled faintly. "When has it ever been easy?" Back on DEATHWORLD, Korath and his officers watched the space outside their command center. The Dominion's fleet continued its relentless bombardment, oblivious to the possibility of reinforcements. Alliance ships were falling fast, burning and exploding in a deadly ballet. The soldiers, exhausted and demoralized, fought desperately on the surface. Then across the command center's main display, a new point of light appeared, a bright flickering star moving at impossible speed. No one recognized its pattern. Sensors flared. "Sir, there's something coming," Sarah said, her voice trembling. Korath's pulse quickened. "On screen," he ordered. The view shifted and the officers gasped. Hundreds of ships appeared, cutting through space with precision and power. Their designs were unmistakably human, sleek yet formidable, built for speed and resilience rather than sheer size. The largest among them, the Invictus, led the formation, its weapons gleaming like a promise of hope. "Humans," Korath breathed, a smile breaking his otherwise stern expression. "They've come." As the human fleet approached, Dominion commanders noticed the anomaly. A flurry of messages crossed their networks, reports of unknown ships moving at speeds and with tactics they had never encountered. Confusion spread like wildfire. The Vakthar were accustomed to total control, to fear and obedience, not the sudden appearance of an unexpected enemy. On DEATHWORLD, civilians peered at the sky, not knowing what they saw. The lights of the human fleet seemed to dance among the stars, bright against the dark backdrop of space. Soldiers paused mid-battle, staring upward in disbelief. Could it really be true? Could humans, the legends of old, truly have returned? Captain Drake raised her voice over the bridge intercom. "All ships maintain formation. Protect the Alliance fleets. Engage the Dominion only where necessary. Remember, we are here to save lives, not just fight a war." Commander Voss glanced at her, concern in his eyes. "The Dominion will attack with everything they have, Captain. They will not hesitate." Drake's eyes hardened. "Then we will not hesitate either. Humanity survives because we do what must be done, not because it is easy." As the fleets drew closer to DEATHWORLD, the first clashes began. Human warships moved with precision that seemed almost unnatural. Dominion fighters rushed forward, but humans anticipated their every move. One by one, enemy ships were disabled by railgun slugs, plasma disruptors, and clever maneuvers that left the Dominion reeling. Back on the planet, Korath and his officers watched in awe. "They fight differently," he said. "They think differently. Humans never just match strength with strength. They outsmart their enemies even in the middle of chaos." The human fleet pressed forward. Alliance pilots, inspired by their arrival, renewed their courage. The tide of battle began to shift. Where before the Dominion had crushed every attempt at resistance, now they faltered. Their formations broke, confusion spreading like a virus. On the bridge of the Invictus, Drake observed the unfolding chaos. She could see the Dominion's flagship, the harbinger of despair, coordinating attacks. "That's our target," she said. "We end this not with hesitation but with certainty." A junior officer hesitated, pointing at the displays. "Captain, the harbinger's defenses. They're massive. We can't just strike head-on." Drake nodded. "We won't. We will use every advantage we have: speed, positioning, and surprise. The Dominion may be powerful, but they are predictable. And humans are anything but predictable." Back on DEATHWORLD, the people whispered in hushed tones. Children clutched their parents' hands. Soldiers steeled themselves for what seemed like an impossible fight. And yet, for the first time in days, they dared to hope. A hope that burned brighter than the fires consuming their cities. Korath turned to Sarah. "Prepare a full report for the fleet. Tell them what is happening. They need to know humans are here." Sarah nodded, her fingers trembling as she sent the message. Across the galaxy, every surviving Alliance fleet received it. Humans have returned. Reinforcements have arrived. Survival is possible. As the human fleet engaged the Dominion, the sky over DEATHWORLD transformed. Explosions lit up the darkness, but now, instead of despair, there was awe. The humans fought with precision, bravery, and cunning. The Dominion, confident in their victory, faced an enemy they had never imagined. And in that moment, the balance of power began to shift. Captain Drake stood at the bridge of the Invictus, her eyes focused on DEATHWORLD below. "This is only the beginning," she said. "The Alliance will survive. The galaxy will remember humanity, and those who thought hope was lost, they will learn what it means to underestimate us." The first part of the human fleet's assault had begun. The battle was far from over, but one thing was clear. The humans had returned, and the galaxy would never be the same again. The stars above DEATHWORLD were no longer empty. The human fleet had arrived, and their presence changed everything. The sky shimmered with the lights of warships, their sleek forms moving with precision and power. The Vakthar Dominion had expected to finish the Alliance quickly, but now for the first time in days their strategy faltered. From orbit, Admiral Korath watched the scene unfold. His jaw was tight, but his eyes shone with hope. Alliance ships rallied around the humans, their movements more coordinated, more confident. Pilots who had thought all was lost now found courage in the presence of the newcomers. On the bridge of the UHS Invictus, Captain Elena Drake observed the Dominion fleet with calm determination. The enemy ships were enormous, heavily armored and equipped with weapons that could obliterate planets. Yet the humans had their own advantages: speed, ingenuity, and the ability to strike where least expected. "Form a wedge formation," Drake commanded. "We will split their forces. Yarrick, take the left flank. I will lead the right. Focus on disabling their capital ships first. Smaller ships can be handled by our support wing." Commander Voss nodded. "Understood, Captain. All wings report ready." Below on DEATHWORLD, soldiers and civilians looked skyward as the first shots rang out. The human fleet opened fire with a precision that seemed almost surgical. Enormous railguns lanced through space, cutting Dominion cruisers in half. Plasma disruptors hit with devastating accuracy, causing entire wings of enemy fighters to explode in brilliant bursts of light. Korath could barely believe what he was seeing. It's like watching a legend come to life," he murmured. "They are doing the impossible." On the ground, Alliance soldiers moved with renewed vigor. They had feared death moments ago, but now, seeing humans take the fight directly to the Dominion, they were inspired. Outposts that had been ready to surrender held their positions. Anti-orbital batteries, previously thought useless against the Vakthar, began to find openings in the enemy's formation. In the midst of the battle, human ships moved with uncanny coordination. The Invictus weaved through enemy fire, never slowing, never hesitating. Smaller human frigates darted between cruisers, launching precise missile strikes and drawing fire away from the Alliance fleet. Every move was calculated, every strike effective. The Dominion commanders for the first time showed confusion. Their systems were designed to crush opponents through overwhelming force, but the humans did not fight conventionally. They adapted instantly, countering the Dominion's patterns with creativity and unpredictability. "Captain," a human officer called on the bridge of the Invictus, "we have a cruiser attempting to flank the Alliance fleet." Drake's eyes narrowed. "Redirect the Phoenix wing, intercept it. Do not let it reach the surface. Yarrick, cover our rear." The Dominion cruiser moved swiftly, confident that the Alliance would crumble under its attack. But as it approached, the Phoenix wing shot from behind a cluster of asteroids, attacking from an unexpected angle. Explosions rocked the cruiser, crippling its engines and sending it tumbling into the void. Below on DEATHWORLD, civilians cheered quietly, almost afraid to voice their joy too loudly. The impossible was happening. The humans had arrived, and with them, hope. Korath felt a weight lift from his shoulders. "If they can do this," he said softly, "maybe we can survive after all." As the battle escalated, the Dominion unleashed their most deadly weapon, a massive plasma cannon capable of destroying entire fleets in a single blast. It glowed with a terrible blue light aimed directly at the Invictus. "Incoming!" a human officer shouted. Drake did not flinch. Evasive maneuvers now. The Invictus twisted through space, its engines screaming, the blast of plasma mist hitting a Dominion cruiser instead. The enemy ship exploded in a cascade of fire and metal, and the Dominion formation wavered. Korath watched the Dominion forces falter. They are faltering. They weren't expecting this. Meanwhile, on the ground, Alliance soldiers seized the opportunity. They launched counterattacks on Dominion positions, pushing them back in places where defeat had seemed inevitable. Small victories became larger ones, each inspired by the humans above. In the midst of the chaos, Drake remained calm, calculating her next move. "We need to strike their command ship," she said. "If we take out the Harbinger of Despair, the rest will crumble." Commander Voss hesitated. "Captain." It's heavily shielded. "A direct attack could be suicidal." Drake's eyes hardened. "Then we find a way. Humans survive because we do not follow the obvious path. Prepare a strike team. We will find a weakness and exploit it." The human fleet moved as one, coordinated and precise. Small teams darted around the edges of the Dominion formation, drawing fire and creating openings. Every ship played a role, every crew member aware of their responsibility. The Dominion could not predict their strategy. They could only react. On Tirath Prime, Korath issued orders to the remaining Alliance forces. "Hold your lines, but support the humans. They are our chance. Do not waste it." The battle raged for hours. Stars burned bright as explosions tore through the void. Ships collided. Lasers and plasma streaked across the darkness, and the sky itself seemed alive with fire. And yet, despite the destruction, the human fleet maintained its momentum. Always moving, always adapting. In the command center, Sarah Talon watched the displays in awe. "Sir, they are incredible," she whispered. "I've never seen anything like it." Korath nodded, his eyes never leaving the battle. "They are humans," he said quietly. "This is what they do. They fight when all hope is gone, and they find a way to win." As the battle reached its peak, the Dominion realized their largest ships were under threat. The Harbinger of Despair, the flagship of the Dominion, unleashed waves of drones and fighters in a desperate attempt to break the human advance. Drake observed the Harbinger. "This ends with them," she said. "We either take it down now, or the Dominion regroups and Tirath Prime falls." The Invictus led a daring strike, weaving through waves of enemy fire. Smaller ships followed, attacking from multiple angles. The Harbinger fired relentlessly, but the humans adapted, dodging, countering, and striking again and again. Korath watched breathless, as the humans executed maneuvers that no computer could have predicted. They were creative, fearless, and precise, and slowly, inexorably, the Harbinger began to take damage. "Hold steady," Drake ordered. "Do not celebrate until it falls." The Harbinger's shields flickered, sparks flying across its hull. Human railguns and missile strikes found weak points, and its weapon systems began to fail. Dominion fighters retreated, confused and leaderless as the flagship faltered. On Tirath Prime, soldiers cheered. The impossible was happening. The humans were turning the tide of battle. Alliance ships moved forward, inspired by the courage above them. Civilians dared to hope for survival for the first time in weeks. Korath turned to Sarah. "Send a message to the fleets. Tell them to support the humans. The Dominion is faltering. We can still win this." Sarah's hands flew over the console. "Yes, sir." Message sent. As the sun rose over Tirath Prime, the battle raged on, but the horizon was no longer a place of despair. The human fleet had arrived, and with them the chance to survive. The impossible had become possible, and the galaxy would never forget this moment. Captain Drake watched the battlefield, her eyes scanning for the next opportunity. "This is only the beginning," she said to her crew. "The Dominion underestimated humanity, and now they will learn what it means to fight against us." The first stage of the battle had begun, and humanity had shown the galaxy why it had been feared, respected, and remembered. Their presence had turned despair into hope, and the tide of war was shifting, one daring move at a time. The battle above Tirath Prime had reached a deadly fever pitch. The human fleet, led by the UHS Invictus, had shattered Dominion formations, but the enemy flagship, the Harbinger of Despair, still loomed like a shadow over the planet. Its massive hull gleamed with blackened metal and glowing energy conduits, and every pulse of its weapons radiated a sense of unstoppable force. Captain Elena Drake stood on the bridge of the Invictus, staring at the Harbinger through the main viewport. Every instinct in her body screamed caution. Their fleet was strong, but the Harbinger was unlike any target they had faced. Its shields were nearly impervious, its weapons deadly, and its crew relentless. One misstep and Tirath Prime could be lost despite all their efforts. "Jarek," Drake said, her voice steady. "I want a full scan of the Harbinger's weak points. Every system, every vent, every weapon conduit. I want a map of its vulnerabilities, no matter how small." Commander Jarek Voss nodded, fingers moving across the console. "I'm on it, Captain. But the enemy is adapting faster than expected. Every time we find a weak point, they reinforce it almost immediately. Drake's gaze did not waver. Then we find the one weakness they can't repair fast enough. That's where we strike. Precision and timing, Jarek. That is how humanity wins. Below, on Tyreth Prime, Admiral Rin Korath coordinated the ground defenses. The Dominion had begun a counter-offensive, unleashing waves of ground troops and armored vehicles to reinforce their orbital presence. Alliance soldiers fought bravely, bolstered by the human fleet above. Each human strike in orbit allowed them to push the enemy back. Korath looked at the holographic displays, his mind racing. The humans, they are extraordinary, he muttered to Sarah Talon, who stood beside him. They don't just fight. They inspire. Every move they make gives us hope. Sarah nodded, her eyes fixed on the incoming reports. Sir, the Invictus is moving closer to the Harbinger. Their fleet is covering them, but then we hold, Korath said. If anyone can do this, it's them. Back in orbit, the Invictus moved with unmatched precision. Smaller human ships created diversions, drawing fire and confusing the Harbinger's targeting systems. Every move was designed to protect the flagship, to allow Captain Drake to approach the enemy without unnecessary loss of life. On the bridge of the Invictus, Drake issued orders with calm authority. Phoenix Wing, flank left. Orion Wing, flank right. Prepare the main strike team. This is the moment we test the Harbinger's defenses. The human strike team, a squadron of the most experienced pilots, moved into position. Each knew the risks. Each understood that failure could mean death. Yet there was no hesitation. Humans had always thrived in impossible situations. They thrived on courage, on ingenuity, on the ability to act when all seemed lost. The Harbinger's sensors detected the Invictus's approach. Energy beams lanced out from its turrets, aiming to cut down the human ship before it could get within striking range. The Invictus twisted and dodged with impossible speed. Its shields flared under heavy fire, absorbing and deflecting blasts that would have destroyed ordinary ships. Steady, Drake said, gripping the railing before her. We are not leaving this fight unfinished. Jarek, target the main weapon conduits. Prepare for ramming sequence if necessary. Voss's eyes widened. Captain? Are you serious? A ramming maneuver? Drake's gaze was unflinching. If we have no other choice, yes. The Harbinger will not leave this system. If it falls, the Dominion fleet falls with it. That is the cost of survival. Humanity fights for more than life. We fight for hope. Below, Korath watched the human fleet approach the Harbinger. His heart pounded. The Dominion had expected the humans to strike cautiously, to avoid risk. But Drake was not cautious. She was fearless. The Invictus moved closer. Laser fire, missiles, and plasma beams streaked across the void. The Harbinger's shields flared with every hit, but the Invictus pressed on, exploiting openings as they appeared. Smaller human ships darted between turrets, drawing fire, sabotaging systems, and creating just enough chaos for the Invictus to continue its approach. Then, a massive energy blast from the Harbinger hit the Invictus directly. The ship rocked violently. Alarms blared. Fires erupted in several sections. Crew members were thrown from consoles, but they scrambled back into action immediately. Damage reports, Drake shouted. Shields at 60%, Voss replied.
Hull integrity dropping.
Weapons functional but limited. Keep moving, Drake ordered. We are almost there. Focus on the main conduit. The Invictus twisted, rolling through space as its engines screamed. The strike team fired synchronized shots at weak points revealed by the earlier scans. Sparks flew across the Harbinger's hull. Its shields faltered. Systems began to overload. The massive enemy flagship, confident and terrifying, wobbled under the precise human assault. Korath could barely breathe. It's working, he whispered. They are doing it. They are winning. The Dominion fleet panicked. Without the Harbinger in full control, coordination broke down. Fighters scattered. Cruisers collided. The humans had not only survived, they had seized the advantage. But Drake knew the danger was far from over. The Invictus was alone now, surrounded by the Harbinger's final defensive fleet. Smaller ships provided cover. But the flagship itself was the prize, and the cost of failure was unthinkable. Prepare for ramming sequence, Drake said quietly, her voice steady despite the tension. If we do this, we end the battle today. Voss looked horrified. Captain? It will destroy the ship. Drake nodded. And save a planet. And thousands of lives. We don't fight for safety. We fight for hope. The Invictus surged forward, engines at maximum power. The Harbinger fired everything it had, but the Invictus twisted and dodged with unmatched skill. Human ingenuity and courage allowed it to close the distance faster than the Dominion could react. Korath, watching from below, clenched his fists. "Do it," he whispered. "Show them what humans can do." The Invictus struck the Harbinger at a precise angle. The collision rocked the entire battlefield. Energy flares, explosions, and debris filled the void. Sparks cascaded across the hull of both ships. For a moment, it seemed as if the Invictus might be lost, but the careful planning and human determination held it together. Inside the Harbinger, critical systems overloaded. Alarms screamed as the ship's weapons failed. Dominion commanders struggled to regain control, but it was too late. The precision strike, the ramming maneuver, and the coordinated human assault had broken the flagship's defenses. The smaller human ships pressed the attack, disabling escape pods and weapon arrays. The Harbinger, once the symbol of Dominion terror, was now crippled. Its shields flickered and died. Energy conduits exploded, and then with one final massive flare, the Harbinger fell into orbit, shattered and defeated. Korath allowed himself to breathe again. They did it. The humans did it. On the ground, Alliance soldiers erupted in cheers. Civilians cried with relief. The battle was not fully over, but the Dominion's flagship, the heart of their power, was destroyed. Humanity had turned the tide. On the bridge of the Invictus, Drake looked at the aftermath. Her ship was damaged, her crew exhausted, but they had succeeded. She allowed herself a brief moment of pride. "We did it," she said quietly. "We stood when all hope was gone." Voss approached her, still wide-eyed. "Captain?" "The fleet. They followed us. They survived. You saved them all," Drake nodded. "No, Jarek, we all saved them. Humanity fights for hope, yes, but it is the courage of everyone that makes victory possible." Korath sent a message to the surviving fleets and ground forces. "The Harbinger of Despair has fallen. Hold your positions. The Dominion is broken. Hope lives." Across the galaxy, wherever the Dominion had terrorized, whispers spread. Humans had returned. They had fought, and they had won against impossible odds. The legend of the Invictus would grow, and with it the reminder: when humanity stands, no hope is ever truly lost. The battle was far from over, but the first victory had been claimed. GalacticPrime still stood, and the human fleet, though battered, remained a symbol of courage, ingenuity, and the unbreakable will of humanity. Captain Drake allowed herself a final glance at the horizon. "This is what humans do," she said softly. "When all hope is gone, we fight, and we never give up." The smoke of battle drifted through the void above GalacticPrime. The Vakthar Dominion had been broken. Their flagship, the Harbinger of Despair, lay shattered in orbit, a monument to their failure. Smaller Dominion ships scattered in disarray, retreating into the far reaches of space, leaderless and demoralized. For the first time in decades, the galaxy could breathe again. On the surface, Alliance soldiers emerged from cover, eyes wide with awe. Civilians, some still trembling from the bombardment, dared to step into the open. The fire in the sky had faded, leaving only the stars and the glowing remnants of the human fleet. For many, it was almost unbelievable that help had arrived when all hope seemed lost. Admiral Rin Korath walked through the streets, overseeing evacuation and aid. The destruction was immense, but for the first time in days he felt a sense of relief. Communications buzzed constantly with reports. Survivors had been saved. Dominion forces were retreating, and the human fleet was intact, though damaged. Sarah Talon, standing beside him, whispered, "Sir, they actually did it, humans. They really saved us." Korath nodded, his gaze rising to the stars. "Yes, Sarah, and not just us. They reminded every species in the galaxy that courage and determination matter more than fear. Humans fight for more than survival, they fight for hope." Above, the UHS Invictus drifted silently among the wreckage. Its hull was scarred, shields shattered in multiple places, and the energy signature of its main engines was low. Inside, the crew worked tirelessly, making repairs and tending to the wounded. Captain Elena Drake surveyed the bridge, her expression calm but weary. "We've done it," she said quietly to Commander Jarek Voss. "GalacticPrime is safe. The Dominion fleet has been broken. The Alliance can survive." Voss shook his head in disbelief. "Captain, the cost, your ship, your crew. We risked everything." Drake turned to him, her eyes steady and filled with determination. Yes, we risked everything. And yet we won. That is what humans do, Jarek. We face impossible odds and we find a way forward. That is what makes us dangerous. And that is what makes us hope. The rest of the human fleet moved carefully, scanning for stragglers and ensuring no Dominion remnants could regroup. Smaller skirmishes flared at the edges of the system, but with the Harbinger destroyed, the Dominion was fractured beyond repair. On DEATHWORLD, civilians began emerging from their shelters. Children ran to parents, people embraced each other, and a quiet sense of celebration began to ripple through the battered cities. The human fleet had done more than fight. They had given life a chance to continue. Korath addressed his officers over the secure channel. Prepare a report for the Alliance Council. Humanity has returned. The Dominion is in retreat. We must begin rebuilding immediately, and we must honor those who made this victory possible. As the words echoed through the command center, Sarah Talon sent messages across the galaxy. Every Alliance fleet, every surviving world received confirmation of the humans' return and the Dominion's defeat. The news spread like wildfire. The galaxy had been reminded that humans were not to be underestimated. Meanwhile, on the Invictus, Drake prepared to make a difficult report. We have sustained damage and casualties, she said, her voice firm. But the system is secure. Our mission is complete. Jarek looked at her, concern written across his face. Captain, what about the crew who were lost? Some may not have survived the ramming maneuver. Drake's gaze softened. We will find them, Jarek. Humanity never leaves its own behind. We will recover what we can, and we will honor the rest. Their sacrifice saved millions. That is what matters. Days passed as the human fleet assisted with repairs, evacuated the wounded, and helped the Alliance regain control of key positions. The Dominion remnants fled into uncharted space, avoiding further confrontation. It was not the end of war, but it was a victory of unimaginable magnitude. On DEATHWORLD, citizens began rebuilding. Survivors shared stories of heroism, Alliance soldiers who had stood against impossible odds, civilians who had risked everything to save others, and, most of all, humans who had arrived in the darkest hour to turn despair into hope. Korath stood on a hillside overlooking the city. Smoke still rose in thin plumes from burned buildings, but the sun was rising. For the first time in days, its light felt warm, safe, and promising. Sarah joined him. Sir, do you think humans will stay? Korath smiled faintly. I don't know, Sarah, but I do know this. They have reminded the galaxy that courage matters, that hope matters, and that when humanity fights, the impossible becomes possible. That is enough for now. Back in orbit, the Invictus drifted among the stars, its engines beginning the slow process of repair. Captain Drake stood on the bridge looking at the planet below. DEATHWORLD will survive, she said softly. And the galaxy. The galaxy will remember today. Commander Voss approached. Captain, the Alliance Council has requested a formal report. They want to know the full details of the engagement. Drake nodded. We will report. But first, we rest. Humanity fights best when it is ready, and today we earned that rest. The survivors aboard the Invictus worked tirelessly, patching hulls, restoring systems, and caring for the wounded. Despite the exhaustion, morale was high. Every crew member knew they had done something extraordinary. They had returned when all hope seemed lost, and they had reminded the galaxy why humans were legendary. As the day ended, Korath sent a final message across the system. All hope was lost, until a human warship entered the field. Today, humanity reminded us all that courage can never be extinguished. Every corner of the Alliance received the message, and it spread beyond the remaining fleets to worlds still in hiding from the Dominion. Across the galaxy, beings of many species whispered the same phrase, humans are back. And when humans fight, hope lives. On the Invictus, Drake watched the stars. She thought of the future, the Alliance rebuilding, the Dominion scattered, and humanity standing as a beacon of courage. She allowed herself a small smile. This was what they had fought for, not glory, not conquest, but life, hope, and the chance to make the galaxy a better place. Korath watched from DEATHWORLD as the human fleet prepared to depart, their engines glowing softly against the black of space. They didn't come for reward, he said. They didn't come for thanks. They came because they knew it was right. That is why humans endure. That is why we will always need them in the galaxy. Sarah nodded, tears in her eyes. They saved us all. Yes, Korath said, voice quiet but certain. They saved us all. And as the human fleet slowly moved back toward the stars, leaving DEATHWORLD behind, one thing was clear. The galaxy had witnessed something extraordinary. Humanity had returned not just to fight but to inspire. They had shown that when courage and ingenuity combine, no enemy is unbeatable, no odds are insurmountable, and no hope is truly lost. The story of DEATHWORLD would be told for generations. Children would grow up hearing of the day the humans returned, of the Invictus standing against impossible odds, and of the courage that reminded the galaxy that when humans fight, heroes are born. Above the planet, the last rays of the sun fell on the Invictus, a symbol of endurance, hope, and the unbreakable spirit of humanity. Captain Elena Drake stood on the bridge one final time, whispering to her crew, "The galaxy may forget our names, but it will never forget our deeds. And as long as humans endure, hope will never die." The galaxy was safe for now. The Dominion had been defeated, the Alliance inspired, and humanity had returned to the stars stronger, wiser, and more determined than ever. And somewhere, among the countless worlds watching in awe, a single truth became clear. All hope was lost, until a human warship entered the field.